Well, for more on this, we're joined now by France 24's International Affairs editor, Philippe Turle. Philippe, can you tell us more about what measures President Macron has announced today and why the culture industry has been singled out for help when so many industries are already struggling?
Well, I'll give you a few facts and figures, if you like, to start with, Alexander. If you look at the cinema business, for example, in France, it is the most successful film industry in Europe, with an average of 300 feature-long films produced every year. And France is one of the major exporters of films around the globe. And Paris has the highest number of cinemas per square meter of any city in the world. And now, this call for help for the cultural sector doesn't just affect the film industry, although calls by actresses like Catherine Deneuve and Léa Seydoux, and also by the actor Jean Dujardin in an open letter last week to the French president and to the culture minister, Franck Riester, for help, have helped the government come forward with this protection plan. But we're talking also here about theatres, about open air events, about concerts, about orchestras. The whole sector of the culture industry in France is having a very tough time because it's been literally closed down since the declaration of the coronavirus pandemic in France in March. And many people in the sector say they are quite literally struggling to survive because the public is absent and all of those establishments are closed. So as you've just been hearing from President Macron, the government has come up with one or two pledges to help the sector get through this pandemic. The first one, which was mentioned in the report, is compensation for part-time employees of the sector. There are about 1.3 million people work in the cultural sector in France, including 300,000 freelance workers. If they don't work for a certain amount of time, they are denied unemployment rights. So the government has said, OK, we will assume those rights right the way up until the end of August next year so that you will have no problem in applying for unemployment benefit if you don't work. So that is a huge relief for all of those people. And the president has also said that he's going to set up a compensation fund for the film industry and for the television industry, for all those films and all those television series that have been interrupted where the shooting can't take place because social distancing is needed between the actors and the actresses, and therefore it's not possible to continue that filming for the time being. So that is also something that has been pledged by the French president today.
The French president also called for what he described as a new future for French culture and ways to reinvent the sector. What's he alluding to there?
Well, the president says, and nobody, of course, can answer this, that he doesn't know how long this coronavirus pandemic is going to last for and just how it's going to shape the cultural sector in France over the next year or two. So he says, well, we'll have to forget the idea that we're going to go back to gatherings of 5,000 people or more, to these gigantic concerts and outdoor events that France is so well known for. We're going to have to redeploy all of those people in the cultural sector into working in another way. But that is also up to the general public to adapt to the situation. So therefore, for example, all those freelance workers in the sector, the 300,000 or so that I was just talking about, he's saying, well, look, let's try and employ those differently. Let's try and bring them into schools to do gatherings of 10 or fewer of the pupils so they can act in front of them. They can talk about cultural events. Let's try to reduce the size of cultural events in France to imagine some different way that culture can be used across the internet, for example. But there's another problem as far as that's concerned, because culture and plays and films are quite widely distributed over the internet at the moment, but there is no money for those taking part in those plays if they're shown on the internet. So that is another situation that needs to be sorted out within the coming months. So the president's asked for the population to adapt to the cultural problems that the sector is having at the moment. We'll just see how long it's going to take before things start to get back to a little bit to the normal situation that we saw before, but it's not going to be anytime soon, I don't think.
Thank you very much for that analysis. Philippe Turle, France 24's International Affairs editor.